hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you are doing?
I can't believe you!
I'm not reading, I'm just looking at the picture.
Welcome to the cold, hard truth on sports.
Welcome, everybody, to another week here of the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. I'm your host, Matthew Long. Welcome. We have a new national championship in college football. Played last night. This is actually the first time in several years I actually didn't go out and cover the game. So it was kind of a bittersweet moment. Although the last few years I've interviewed a lot of the players that were involved in this game because it has been the same two teams for the last 4 years. I tweeted it out last night. Vegas has the odds out on who they have as national champions. And surprise, Clemson and Alabama are the top two favorites. Clemson being 9-5 favorite, Alabama a 5-2 favorite, Ohio State 12-1, Georgia 12-1, Michigan 14-1, Oklahoma 15-1, Texas 20-1. Here's the one that this is the one that really grabbed my attention for some very obvious reasons, but for reasons like, oh, really? That's nice to know. Nebraska, 25-1. Washington, 25-1. Florida, 25-1. Notre Dame, 25-1. So, out of those teams, Washington played in the Rose Bowl. Florida seems to be turning around a program there, getting better. Notre Dame was in the Final Four teams. And they're saying Nebraska has the same odds to make it, to win the game as those other three teams. Again, just ahead of Oregon and Wisconsin. Oregon 30-1, Wisconsin 50-1, LSU 50-1, Mississippi State 51, Auburn 50-1. So, and just after that, I know I had a few people ask me last night, Miami is 80-1. UCF fans, 500-1. That's how much your team, who's lost once in the last 2 years, and beat Auburn, who had wins over Alabama and Georgia last year, two teams in the national championship game, and only lost by one score to LSU, who look very formidable in the SEC West. They see you as a 500-1 odds of winning that game. Precisely saying that regardless of what you do, you're not going to make it in. New head coach will be Bruce Arians. They have a press conference there with Bruce Arians. He will have Todd Bowles as his defensive coordinator. I have several other text messages stuff here I haven't looked at yet as I was preparing for the show. So I should have some more information and some over tonight and tomorrow on which directions they're going to go with offensive coordinators and other staff and stuff like that. So this hire was, without a doubt, sounds, smells, looks like it has to do 100% with the relationship of Jason Light and what the relationships he's built there while his time in Arizona. So look forward to seeing that in Tampa moving forward. Well, the interesting thing is about Bruce Arians. He retired a couple years ago from the Arizona Cardinals, who has a new head coach. I'll get into later in the show. But he actually still had a year left on the contract. So they actually have to work out those, because you can't be getting paid from retirement from one team while you're the head coach of another team. So, yes, the Arizona Cardinals do have another head coach. 11 months after they hired their last one. So I'll tell you who that is here a little bit later in the show. But I want to definitely get into talking about this national championship game. It was I picked Clemson to win 38-34. That was my final prediction for before the game. I got the right team, but I thought, like many people, this game was going to be a lot closer than it was. And this game wasn't close for a lot of reasons. Nick Saban got, without a doubt, outcoached. The defensive line for Clemson, especially late in the game, showed up huge. Really getting penetration and winning in the trenches. They came to put in work. They killed it last night. The defensive secondary reaped the benefits of that. I had my biggest critique was that secondary was giving so much cushion to the Alabama wide receivers. I don't know why they didn't work more quick passes, more of the run game, because the defensive backs for a lot of the game were not in a position to really come up and stop the run or to prevent quick passes. And they never really did it. Tua was holding on to the ball too long, forcing, and let me tell you, Venables did a phenomenal job of play calling and mixing up the looks on defense, and it was just a phenomenal job of just giving all kinds of different looks. Tua didn't admit that, he got lost or confused or during times. Of course, he's not going to, but that's what happened. They were changing, moving around, because at the beginning of the play, the quarterback lets the offensive line know, or the center will let the quarterback know. They'll communicate who's the Mike linebacker, because that's going to dictate their blocking. Because that's center out from their blocking scheme. So they'll identify who is the Mike, who's the middle linebacker. It can be anybody. The quarterback can pick anybody. If he wants to pick John in the fourth row of section F as Mike, that's the Mike. He can pick anybody. He could pick a cheerleader if he wanted to. Don't even have to be on the field. But whoever he calls out, it's usually a linebacker, as Mike, that's who Mike is. But They were faking a lot of blitz. They were doing a lot of rotating in the secondary. They were moving guys out into coverage. And they did a great job with their front four of creating penetration and really protecting their gaps. There was a few times where Alabama really got some push and they got some decent yards running, but they never really capitalized with it in the second half. They really went away from running at the end of the third and into the fourth quarter. Some of that had to do with because they were down and they needed points, but it was also something that they needed to make sure that they maintained and stuck with because it was working. The goal was, I said, going into half, is they needed to take advantage of the middle of the field, those short, quick passes, and the run game. That's what you just need to work on, converting and moving the ball downfield. You'll score. You just need to work and move the ball downfield. Progression downfield. And they didn't do that. They were trying to force balls long. Tua was holding on to it too long. The defense was getting there and moving him outside of the pocket. Coverage was fairly tight. So it was, again, because they were playing off. They were playing off the receivers. So there was a lot of cushion. So by the time they got 10 yards deep, that DB's right there. And that time was wasted with Tua being pushed out of the pocket, having to scram, trying to make something happen. The receivers weren't coming back and weren't giving Tua enough to work with. I didn't see them hardly at all go with the tight end all night long. The middle of the field was there. There's a lot of times Clemson was in cover 1 or cover 0, and the middle of the field was wide open, and they're trying to force plays to the outside or press things downfield. It just wasn't there. So it was an off night for Alabama. They were schooled. So that being said, let me welcome in my co-host. He is the author of the P.K. Frazier novel series. He's one of our top contributors for college sports, as well as the editor for golf, Mr. Kevin Crest. How are you doing tonight, Kevin?
I'm doing well. A little road weary. Hit 11 states in 9 days. Got home last night, but ready to go.
So, where all did you go?
Well, went to New Jersey and Virginia, and every state between Arkansas and there. So, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, Tennessee, and back home. A little geography lesson there for folks. So get your atlas out and look that all up. So it's quite the saw some football games, missed some football games, but boy, last night was something else. That's a real beatdown.
Did you see that coming? Of course,
you predicted Clemson specifically in my piece last week. Before even the semifinals, I had mentioned that history would indicate that Clemson and Alabama would meet in the final and Clemson would win, and they did. So we still haven't had a top seed win the playoff. This is the 5th edition, and the top seed has yet to come away victorious. So I don't know if the committee needs to rethink who they put as a top seed, or if it's just the nature of the beast. But this year I really thought Clemson and Alabama were 1 and 1A. They were so far ahead of everybody else. So and Clemson just had their number last night. They did a great job of game planning, and it looked to me like Saban knew midway through the second quarter that they were in some big trouble. Goes for it on fourth down, his own territory. Fakes a field goal when everybody on the planet knew they were going to fake it, and it didn't work. But all those things aside, Clemson was just a better football team last night. When you win by 28 points, it's pretty hard, or you lose by 28 points. It's pretty hard to say, oh well, if we'd done this, we'd done that. They just got their butts kicked. That's all there was to it. Clemson came out, played hard. Their quarterback was better. I think Tua is still injured. I don't think he's 100%. I don't think they were comfortable in running him out and doing a lot of risky stuff with him and with his feet, because I think he was hurt. He's still a little bit gimpy, and I do not think that, even though they did put Jalen Hurts in late in the game, I don't think that Saban had any confidence in Jalen Hurts whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake. I think it sent the wrong message. It says, I give up on Tua, and let me put in Hurts during garbage time. Hurts is supposed to be, a guy that's supposed to be your high-end backup, a guy that has played for a national title, 2 of them, and a guy that you can lean on. But he puts him in during garbage time. See, I think what the problem is Tua needs to own it. I don't think he was able to own that game. He didn't play good. And I think he should have just played him all the way through the end of the game, because I get you want to look forward to the future, but he needed to know what it was like to really lose that game, because he hadn't lost a game at Alabama. He played half of a game last year in the national title game, and then he played this year, again, about what he's played in every other game the whole year, 3 quarters plus some. He's never finished a game all season. And again, Saban bails him out. Don't finish a game. I just think it sends the wrong message. He should have just let him in and make him own it.
Well, I was kind of surprised that we didn't see Hurts a little earlier, just to mix things up a little bit for Clemson's defense, to give them a different look.
Yeah.
Because seriously, I mean, last year in a similar situation, down 2 touchdowns at halftime, Saban benches Hurts and puts in Tua. So, I was a little bit surprised we didn't see him earlier. I have to tell you, the body language from Nick Saban a couple times in late second, mid third quarter, it looked to me like he had no answer for Clemson, and that's unusual, right? But he looked like, man, we're kind of, I don't know what to do here, and people are talking about, the end of the Saban era, Saban's done, Alabama, the passing of the torch. You know what? It sometimes, and it's happened very rarely with Alabama, right? I mean, other teams, we see it all the time because they lose once or twice a season. We've never seen this with Alabama the last several years. I mean, the games they've lost were like, last second to Auburn a couple of times. You know what I mean? I mean, we've never seen this literally complete domination on both sides of the ball by another football team against Alabama. And it happened. It just happened. And it happened to happen to Alabama last night. We're not used to it, but it's not unusual. I mean, hell, what happened in the NFL on Saturday? I mean, the Bears doink a extra field goal at the end to lose to a team they should have beaten. I mean, come on. So it happens all the time. We're just not used to it happening to Alabama, right? At least in the Saban era. And so I think there's a lot of overreaction to what happened last night. I picked Clemson. I thought Clemson was going to. I told you last week or 2 weeks ago that Clemson was the team I thought was going to win the whole thing anyway. Now, did I think they were going to win by 4 touchdowns? No. Right. I mean, I can't say that. But Clemson's every bit as good as Alabama. In my piece that I posted on our site, and people can go back and read it, it's about the inevitability of Clemson, Alabama playing again as they did. When you look at the statistics and the schedules and who did what to whom, I mean, Clemson's resume was every bit as good as Alabama's, and Clemson's secondary is better than Alabama's. So you've got some signs pointing to Clemson. The coaching staffs are pretty equal. I think Alabama got out coached last night, which is really unusual, right? They get outgamed. But Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator for Clemson, is the best in the game. He gets paid $2 million a season, which is more than probably half the coaches in FBS, and for a very good reason. He's the best defensive coordinator in the country, and he did a great job last night getting that team ready. But and that was with a couple guys on Clemson that were suspended.
For PEDs. That's the thing. They were joking about that, too, the PED bus.
Yeah, they had some guys suspended. But, Dabo Swinney's done exactly, and in the same time frame, by the way, as Saban at Alabama. They've both been there about the same. I think I believe Swinney's a couple years shy of Saban in tenure at their respective schools, but it's pretty similar. The last 4 years. Why is it that we're so? I don't understand why some of the experts are so surprised at this. Because Clemson's been toe to toe with Alabama the last 4 years. They're 2-2 in the last 4 years against each other. They both have 2 national championships in that time frame. I mean, right now they're back in the day. They're the Miami and Nebraskas, right, of the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Right. That's who they are. That's who we've got. So I don't see that it's yes. Was it surprising last night at the margin of victory? But it really wasn't a 4-touchdown game. Alabama had 3 possessions inside the red zone that they totally just doinked on. They missed a field goal. They went forward and fourth. That ended up at the 1-yard line, and they went. I think they had a turnover down there. Okay, so it could have been. It was more like a 44-28 game. And the first quarter was amazing. The first 11 minutes of the game were amazing. It was fantastic football. But I just think that it was just a bad night for Alabama. They just didn't play one of their better games, and they got it. They ended up in a buzzsaw because Clemson played one of the best games probably that program's ever seen in their history, in terms of a complete football game. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was on that. Oh, the one-handed catches by the freshman Ross. I mean, what was that? It was just one of those nights.
He was just on point.
And I think, oh man, and I think we'll see the same game next year. I really do. There's no reason to expect that we wouldn't see the same game next year, with the exception, Clemson doesn't have anybody facing them in the ACC that's going to challenge them. I don't think. And even if they stub their toe in the regular season, they'll probably win the conference championship game and get into the playoffs. Alabama has Georgia. Georgia had another killer recruiting season. Georgia's given Alabama all they could handle the last 2 seasons in 3 different games, right? And so we'll have to see. I think Clemson's probably a more of a certainty, especially given that. But you never know. Injuries, stuff can happen. But last night the Alabama radio broadcaster on the Crimson Tide Network basically said, Clemson just won the national championship. We'll see you again next year. Same place, same time. kind of thing.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Played again next year, so yeah. And I'm not, and who am I to argue with that? It's been 4 years in a row. Now, last year it was in the semifinals, but still, I mean, the winner of that game has won the last 4 national championships. Okay, that's just how it's been, right? I don't think it's a bad thing. As Kirk Herbstreit or one of the guys last night said, if you're an opposing coach and you're tired of it, then find a way to beat them. Find a way, just like the Warriors in the NBA. If you're tired of seeing Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Durant lift the trophy, then go out and find another way to beat them, because everybody has the same opportunity. There's no special thing with Alabama. I mean, it's college football. They all play by the same rules. So, you just go ahead and Clemson's built it from scratch. I mean, yeah, they won a national championship in 1981 under Danny Ford, but they were not a good team in the 80s and the 90s and early millennium. Before Dabo Swinney took over, they didn't even compete for an ACC title. And so what he's done there is what any other school can do. You can go out there and just build a staff, work hard, get it going, and they have done that. I have a lot of time for Dabo Swinney. I think what he's done is out. And he's a great guy. He must have mentioned God or Jesus at least 8 times in his post-game interviews last night. I mean, the guy is a. I'd love my son to play for him. And I think did you mention a couple weeks ago that Kirk Herbstreit's sons are going to walk on at Clemson? I mean, and that I think that's a testament to character of Dabo Swinney is what that is. That a guy like Kirk Herbstreit would want his kids to play there. I think it's fantastic. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say about that game last night, except it was just a wonderful display of football by Clemson, and a little bit of a stubbing of the toe by a team we don't expect to stub their toe, but it's not like Clemson didn't roll over everybody. They did. They won their last 13 games by 20 plus points. I mean, Alabama was just the latest one. So.
It was almost like since they wrapped up the season winning the ACC, they immediately started preparing to play Alabama. Not saying that they didn't prepare for Notre Dame. They clearly did. But I feel like they started, and again, there's some similarities in how of what you see between the two teams. Just in general play, it's not, especially with defensive schemes and stuff like that, they found ways to really exploit the outsides on both teams. And that was really the scouting report on Alabama. They were really susceptible on the edges. And Trevor Lawrence, I think the biggest thing that he needed to work on, and I commented this at halftime, was going through the progression and finding that open receiver in stride. He did that a few times, but I think kind of what you were saying earlier, I think he got bailed out a lot by phenomenal play of his wide receivers. So although the hype is very high on Trevor Lawrence, he wasn't as accurate as he should have been, or you'd like him to be, but nonetheless effective. I said he needed to run a little bit more to sell the RPOs and the play action and to bring that defense in so over-the-top plays are more effective. And you really started seeing that more in the second half, him running more or giving that a appeal that he was running more. And it was just the passing game really shredded Alabama, but the run game was enough there to keep them honest. And then on the other side of the ball, that defensive front for the front seven for Clemson really held it down on the line, showing a lot of looks, blitz, not blitz, dropping back into coverage, creating some confusion, as well as the secondary moving a lot. I've seen they brought in a couple of blitzes from the defensive backs on plays, and that was actually the one interception. There was a corner, the nickel blitz, and then there was a rotation between the cornerback and the safety, and the linebacker fell back into coverage. So the ball was also on top of that thrown behind the wide receiver, and that was the first score of the game. And I think that, really scoring first, especially on defense, really kind of set the tempo and help Clemson not get in a hole in this game. Like they have in some games, they're not known for really starting off fast. They're kind of with the team and then finish strong after half. So I thought for sure that Alabama would have, if you told me that they scored under 21 points, I wouldn't have taken that bet. I would have willing to bet that they scored over 21 points, but 16, it held to a lot of field goal tries, and with kicking again, you'd think at this point Nick Saban, who's a phenomenal recruiter, would bring somebody in to really, really focus on the special teams, because special teams really seem to be, especially involving kickers, really seem to be their Achilles heel in whatever loss they have. Clearly, that the missed field goal wasn't what lost the game for them, but it really didn't help by adding to more momentum for Clemson. So it's a wonder why you don't see maybe that sort of move being made with Alabama. What did you make of it?
Yeah, Dan Patrick today even mentioned on his program that Alabama should have like the 3 best kickers in the country, right, on their roster, because you'd expect them to be able to do that given the recruiting capability of that staff. And I don't know, it's just one of those things. Because listen, these two programs, Alabama and Clemson's senior classes are leaving the program. Both of them have 55 wins and 2 national championships. I mean, how insane is that? I mean, that's a level of excellence that is just, most coaches just want 1 national championship, and these guys have, of course, Nick Saban has 5 at Alabama and 1 at LSU, but Dabo now has 2 in the last 3 years. This is an incredible level of excellence among these two programs, and so when we're not alone. Everybody in sports talk radio has been dissecting this game for the last almost 24 hours now, or 22 hours, whatever it is. But I just feel like we're making so much more out of it than it really is. It's a football game against 2 really good teams, and one team got on a roll, and there were some big plays. Nick Saban said it himself. He basically said, "Look, we turned the ball over. We didn't execute in the red zone, and we gave up long 3rd down conversions." Well, as you know, Matthew, we're a stat guy. Those are the 3 things that determine the outcomes of not just football games but entire seasons, right? 3rd down percentage, turnover ratio, and red zone execution. Clemson did everything right, and Alabama didn't. And that turns into a 44-16 game. That's how it is. And so, yeah, we can split hairs and nitpick here and there, but if you get up to the 30,000-foot level, Nick Saban still has 2 national championships in the last 3 years, and what's wrong with that? I mean, let's get real here. I mean, and 5 in the last 10 years. I mean, good gravy. I just hate to. I'm not gonna throw dirt on the Alabama program right now. I mean, no way.
I don't get it.
I still think they're the favorite to win next year.
I really don't get it.
I mean,
how?
They still have Tua's back, right?
Yeah, Tua's still back. Technically, Hurts is still back, is he not? I mean, he's a graduate student.
At this point, he has not transferred yet.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, by the way,
now,
just so I wanted to get your reaction on this.
Play immediately.
I wanted Francois, the quarterback at Florida State, decided to. DeAndre Francois has decided, at least so far, he's enrolled in classes at FSU and looks to be staying. Again, he's enrolled in classes to start for the spring semester. I don't understand why he stayed. Like if he, like Hurts, wants to continue his career in football at the quarterback position, they need to transfer somewhere. Sitting behind other guys with their skill set is not helping them in their career in the NFL. Specifically, their draft stock and that first contract. I think it's a terrible business decision by both of them.
But the difference with Hurts is that he's he's graduate. He's going to graduate, and so he can play immediately next year. Francois, I'm not so sure why he isn't or hasn't transferred or didn't transfer. Because listen, Florida State's a train wreck. Willie Taggart. I'm sorry, I said it a couple weeks ago. I do not think he's that good of a head football coach. He's okay, but he's at Florida State. I mean, Jimbo Fisher got run out of Florida State, kind of. He ran himself out. But he did win a national championship there. Jimbo Fisher, I'm talking about, at Florida State. Willie Taggart's got no chance. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think the other thing, you go back to that whole quarterback thing, and Dabo Swinney did a great job in benching Kelly Bryant when he still was able to redshirt and then transfer without losing a season. He can play next year at Missouri. So that was a nice thing by Dabo. I'm still a little bit surprised that Hurts didn't transfer, but he did come in. But I don't think Jalen Hurts is an NFL quarterback. I just don't think he's going to play at the next level.
He's not.
Okay, so if he wants to stick around, try for another team. We don't know what happens. What's in these kids' heads. I mean, they're still college students. Transferring is not easy. I mean, you've been to school, you have friends, you have relationships, you have stuff going on. I mean, transferring schools, that's a big deal, especially if you've been there for 4 years, right? I mean, I think we toss that around like it's some easy thing, but I mean, I know when I was in college, I know it was in the Stone Ages, Matthew, and it was back when we had to use coal, we had to take our own coal for heat, but.
Trump's favorite element,
transfer.
Carbon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't want to transfer. And these kids, they still are student athletes. I mean, okay, some of them are athlete students, but they're still student athletes.
I was going to say, Kevin, you sound like you're starting to make an argument for me.
get his degree. I mean, so you know, I think Jalen Hurts probably will transfer now that he's graduated, but that's a whole different decision now, right?
Yeah.
He can graduate. I can go to grad school, right? He can say, where do I want to go to grad school? What kind of programs do you have? You know, what kind of degree can I get? That's the kind of stuff that all the sports channels just kind of gloss over, like, oh, no big deal. No, it's important to Jalen Hurts, because if he's not going to play in the league, at least as a quarterback. Now, Jalen Hurts has a lot of talent. Jalen Hurts can play probably wide receiver. He may even be able to convert to the other side of the football. He's got talent. He's got, you know, athletic capability. I do not believe he's going to be an NFL quarterback. He's not Lamar Jackson. And look how Lamar Jackson struggled the other day in the playoffs. So I think there's a lot to be said for Jalen Hurts. And by the way, if I am an NFL team, I do want to draft him as just an athlete. If there's a character thing going on here, wow, he gutted it out. He stuck it out. So listen, there's a lot of other dynamics and issues here than just blatantly saying, oh gosh, he should have transferred. Now, if you've got a chance to be an NFL, okay, Russell Wilson, for instance, transferred from NC State to Wisconsin, but that was a graduate transfer, Matthew, and he also had decided not to play baseball. So Russell Wilson's a little bit more like Kyler Murray, although Wilson's bigger than Murray. I don't think Murray has a future in the NFL at the quarterback position. He's too small. I mean,
I don't know.
Just too small, but
I think he.
Lots of other factors.
I think he may be one of the outliers. Again,
He might be.
It's a funny thing. I tweeted congratulations to Philip Lindsay today. I heard him. He was on a radio show, and I talked to him almost a year ago, just about 1 year ago. He was coming out after the Shrine game, and we're talking just outside of, because there's a loading ramp where all the players come out, and I'll catch them after the game out there, because sometimes it's kind of hard to get a hold of people on the field because there's just so much stuff going on, and a lot of time they'll talk to a few people and then they head back to the locker room, especially if they don't feel like maybe they had the best game or something like that. They're going to get out of there, so I always catch them on the way out, and I talked to them for a little bit, but the biggest thing, talking with scouts and stuff, and they were just saying, he's so small. He went undrafted because of his size. That's what it is. It's not that they didn't think he could run, It's just his size. That was really what it was. But the guy had such heart, and going undrafted really put a chip on his shoulder. And he's done enough to kind of earn a contract. Again, there was 32 running backs drafted. I think it was 32 running backs that were drafted in last year's draft, 1st through 7th round. He went undrafted, and he's a Pro Bowler. First time. Undrafted, rookie, and Pro Bowler. So it's kind of the interesting thing. He is undersized, but he's that outlier. And I think Kyler Murray might be one of those guys that's undersized, but may be that outlier. He does have a good arm. He is pretty accurate with his throws, and he has a lot of playmaking ability. The big thing is, and we saw this with Lamar Jackson, and again, a lot of people get upset when I bring up Lamar Jackson. They say, oh, you're hating on Lamar. Listen, in the NFL, you cannot be a runner as quarterback and expect to have longevity as a career. Quality. I mean, Cam Newton had one phenomenal season. That was an outlier season. The rest of his seasons have been very pedestrian and mediocre, especially as a quarterback. He is at times.
But Cam Newton's huge.
He's huge.
But Cam Newton's huge.
He's huge. There's nobody else like Cam Newton.
Right.
Cam Newton is a defensive end that's playing quarterback.
Guys bounce off him.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know.
But RG3 got snapped like a twig.
Everybody else. Just say enter any
Johnny
other name.
Manziel couldn't make it.
Johnny
Tebow,
Manziel.
who also, by the way, is a big dude. Right?
Who?
Tim Tebow. He's a big dude too, but he doesn't have an arm. But
yeah, he has no arm. So that's the thing is that's kind of how I saw Dak Prescott coming out. Like if Tim Tebow had a better arm, that's kind of what I saw for him in the NFL. I know a lot of people were on the Dak Prescott bandwagon,
and they were coached by the same guy.
Yeah,
right? They're coached by the same guy, right?
Yes.
Dan Mullen coached them both.
Yeah.
Right.
So
he was the assistant at Florida, and then he was the head coach at Mississippi State for Prescott. So he coached Tebow and Prescott, right?
Yeah. And he
just prepared Prescott better for the NFL.
Yeah, well, and also he had he did a little bit better at throwing. What the funny thing is in high school, Tim Tebow was a passer. He passed a lot. I think he set high school records at passing. I know he ran some, but it was as passing. But in college, he was primarily known for running. And in the NFL, he had that one game, that one pass, the 80-yard pass in overtime. It's funny, I remember watching Sports Science on it, and they said if he was a better passer, it probably wouldn't have been a touchdown. Because he was inaccurate and threw it a little bit behind him, it actually put him in a better position to maneuver around the defenders because the defenders followed the ball more, and it gave him enough space.
It was kind of an inadvertent, it was like an inadvertent back shoulder throw,
yeah,
but it wasn't intended to be a back shoulder throw. It just happened to be a back shoulder throw
because he's not a good passer. That's why. It was a blissful mistake. That was what it was. It's your favorite child that you didn't plan for. That's what it was. It was that one moment. He had a moment. And that's it. And people are still living off the lore of that. He clearly is not, and that's why he's playing baseball now. And again, that's why Kyler Murray should be playing
and that's why
football. He should try NFL, whatever it is.
Tebow, but I love Tebow's analysis on the SEC Network.
Yeah, he's gotten so much better. He used to be kind of, dare I say, dainty about it, which he is no longer. But he's gotten pretty good with his breakdowns.
Yeah, I think he's, and then he comes at it from and especially on the SEC Network because he's an SEC guy and all that. I mean, I think that he brings some credibility to the role. I like it. I just don't understand why he didn't stay in the league and play a different position because he could have been every bit as good as Zach Ertz for the Eagles at tight end, Kelsey for the Patriots, an H-back, as good as Hunter Henry for the Chargers. I mean, he has the size and the hands. I mean, he just didn't want to be something other than a quarterback.
It's about the lore, because if he changes positions, that says he wasn't good enough at it, and that whole fight to be something that legend of the underdog quarterback that he wanted, he was playing that role. The guy that despite people saying he wasn't good at it, that he was going to succeed at it. That was the whole thing. If he decides to be an H-back or a tight end or a fullback or whatever they wanted to call him, it changes that. It's that same appeal isn't there. So he's better off not playing anything or trying anything but that. Because he did have that one successful moment, he can ride that successful moment into the sunset. Because you can't challenge that. Even though he got cut from 3 other teams after that, he is literally riding into the sunset on top. He went out on a high note, essentially. If you think about it, the last game he really played in was that game.
Yeah, but I don't think getting cut 3 by 3 teams subsequent to that exactly is called a high note. I mean, sure, the last game he played was a playoff victory for the Broncos, but man, I mean, listen, there have been a few players that have switched positions. I mean, Matt Jones, the quarterback at Arkansas back in the early 2000s, went on to have a very successful career as a tight end and wide receiver in the league. I know Matt. He said, I had fun. He switched from quarterback to play in the league, and he made I don't know what his salary. I think he made somewhere in the $20-something million range career wise. I think he had 2 contracts.
I haven't seen him in a while. He doesn't show up to the official Matt Club anymore.
Well, no, he retired. Yeah, he retired. He retired 5-6 years ago, but he played a number of years as a receiver. Here's the thing. I've never been able to reconcile Tim Tebow's Christian leanings when he talks about. I mean, he does Christian motivational speaking, and one of the things about Christianity and about what we believe is about using your gifts. And I've never been able to reconcile the fact that there's a guy that was a very gifted athlete and could have done a lot in football beyond being quarterback. And in fact, he wasn't really a quarterback at Florida. What he was the old single wing halfback. They didn't call him quarterback back then. They played the single wing is what they played. He ran for as many touchdowns as he passed for, I think.
You say he was a wing T specialist?
He was a wing T specialist. So I just have a hard time reconciling this whole thing about, oh gosh, here I am and I'm espousing this, and yet God gave him all these gifts, and he decided, I'm not going to use them. That's how I think about Tim Tebow. Is he didn't use them. He said he was stubborn, let his ego get in the way, and said, well, I'm only going to use them for what I want to use them for, and that's to be a quarterback. Well, he sucked at the NFL level. Now, he may think he was successful, but nobody else thinks he was successful. Okay, he won a couple games. Okay, big deal. Blake Bortles took the Jaguars to the AFC Championship game last year. Okay, does anybody think Blake Bortles is a star quarterback in the NFL? No. It's a liability to his team, but they still play him at the position. He's better than Tebow was. So anyway, I just feel that's so. When I look at Kyler Murray, which getting back to the Kyler Murray thing, there's been a lot of Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks in college that have never been successful at all in the NFL. We just talked about one of them. RG3 was for a season, but he couldn't stop running, so he got injured. He's I think he's a third stringer. I think he's actually on. He's the third stringer on the Ravens, I think. Now he's still back in the game, but you got a long list of quarterbacks. It's hard enough to make it when you've got all the skills. Kyler Murray, I agree that maybe he's the guy, but I mean, Drew Brees is the guy. Drew Brees is 6 feet. Kyler Murray's 5'8". Are you kidding me? and he played in the Big 12. They don't play defense in the Big 12. They play 7-on-7 in the Big 12. Could you have seen? I mean, we saw what happened to Colin Murray against Oklahoma. Now, sure, they scored some points, but how about Colin Murray against Clemson last night? What would that have looked like?
Let me ask you this: if you're a team that's in the toilet, and for a couple years, you want to sell tickets because at the end of the day, this is entertainment.
Now that's a whole different. That's
Again,
a different set of criteria, right?
Not every
that's a different
team.
set of criteria, right?
Because I don't think
and
the team
and that's why
that pulls him, kind of like I know people get upset. Marcus Mariota, who is so injury prone, he still hasn't transitioned really to an NFL offense. You know, same thing with Carson Wentz.
And now his offensive coordinator. And now his offensive coordinator is off to Green Bay. So now Mariota's going to have another offensive.
Oh, by the way,
I think it's only his fourth.
It's funny because the last time I know he's been in the league for a little while coaching, but the last time I remember LaFleur he was a quarterback for the Omaha Beef. It's a semi-professional team in Omaha. The Omaha Beef.
Nice.
Isn't that such a semi-pro name? The Beef.
So you just have to hope they're not the ground beef.
Yeah.
But didn't LaFleur go to some nondescript, really small college or something? He played quarterback, but I mean, it's so. Let's talk about this a second. So there were 2 head coaches announced today in the NFL, right?
Yes. Tampa Bay officially announced Bruce Arians as the head coach. And
excuse me, 3.
Todd Bowles
3 head coaches
will be the defensive coordinator.
Right. So Matt LaFleur at the Packers. That was technically yesterday, I guess. Arians with the Bucks. Good hire. They've got some contract things to work out, as you were mentioning before with the Cardinals, because he officially retired with time left on his contract. And then the Cardinals hired Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah. Cliff Kingsbury, who for like
40 at Texas Tech.
For like 15 minutes was the offensive coordinator at USC. Okay, so
yeah, I'm not even sure his name's on the parking. His name was actually on the parking spot. But Kingsbury was 35-40 at Texas Tech as a head coach.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know.
Well,
he's hired as
the biggest.
coach
I think
in
the
NFL?
biggest misnomer is people compare college head coaches to NFL head coaches. The jobs are 2 completely different jobs. They other than the fact that they're related by football, a lot of the details of the job are vastly different. In college, a lot of it, it isn't even necessarily
totally
like coaching. A lot of it's recruiting and
totally agree.
Massaging the egos of boosters
babysitting.
you got to deal with the NCAA, the on-campus compliance, the athletic director who may or may not like you because he may or not have hired you. So, and then you got to deal with parents and friends of these athletes. It's just, you see?
I get all that, but Kingsbury. So what does he bring to the Cardinals?
Offense.
I'm just trying to think of.
That's it.
That a billion other guys.
Offense.
Okay, he brings offense. Okay, he coached Patrick Mahomes. That's what he brings.
And couldn't win with Mahomes. By the way, he had Davis Webb, who was who's with the Giants, who left there. He had Baker Mayfield, and who left there, both because of Patrick Mahomes, pretty much. So it's not that he doesn't know how to identify good quarterback talent, which he can, and he can coach it well. But the issue that they had with him is he could not win enough games overall. And the thing is, because he got fired from his alma mater, that's really bad for college terms. In the NFL, it doesn't really matter because they want to bring him in to be the leader they see him as and to focus on the offense. And I think what they want to do is similar to what they did with Sean Payton. I'm not saying he's the next Sean Payton. What they did with Sean Payton is bring in that offensive-minded person as your head coach and then supplement them with a very senior, tenured defensive coordinator, which is something he should have did at Texas, but he never got around to doing that. So they fired him. And
well, there's a difference, though. And I'll run down the line here. Okay, so they're comparing Kingsbury to Sean Payton, who, by the way, was offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, had extensive NFL background, okay? Sean McVay, young, yes. Sean McVay was young, but his background was in the NFL, okay? Kyle Shanahan, head coach of 49ers. By the way, LaFleur, Shanahan, and McVay were all on the same staff at the same time with the Redskins a few years ago. Just a little bit of trivia there. So, but Kingsbury comes purely from a college background. And listen.
Well, he played for Saban. He played for Saban with the Patriots. He played for Sean Payton with the Saints. He was with Rex Ryan with the Jets. And I want to say, I don't know. I don't remember who he was with when he was with the CFL, but he ended his career in the CFL. But he does have, some extensive experience.
He was never a coach.
No, but he was a player. Yeah. But when you're a backup, quarterback, you're essentially a coach. You're assistant coach. That's essentially what you are.
I'll give the over-under on his tenure with the Cardinals at 2.5 seasons.
I just wanted to remark something because I was checking here on your favorite website, Wikipedia, and it goes through. You know how it goes through the list of tenures and when they were with places. They have here UCF offensive coordinator. It literally says 30 minutes. It as length of time. It's Texas Tech from 2013 to 2018. USC offensive coordinator, 30 minutes. Arizona Cardinal head coach, 2019 to present. 30 minutes. That's comedy.
Well, I mean, I don't know what he's trying to contract, but that's a whole other issue we could talk about at a different time. Was just the whole idea of signing a contract and then immediately. I mean, that's a bizarre course of events. And I mean, listen, he was a great hire for USC as offensive coordinator. And if I'd been Lynn Swann, I would have said, we're going to hold you to your contract. Because the guy is a great offensive mind. Now, will that translate to the NFL? I don't know. I guess it should. There's the lines are blurring, and he's got Josh Rosen down there. He's got a good young quarterback. But they better bring in somebody that can coach defense because obviously he didn't. I mean, Texas Tech gave up 43 points a game or something like that. I mean, he did not. There wasn't any defense going on down there in Lubbock. He better bring some defense to Phoenix. or Glendale, I guess more technically. But so no, it just was a weird hire to me. It just seems like an odd. It appeared to me to be a knee jerk. Let's follow the leader kind of hire for the Cardinals. I mean, they had Bruce Arians, who was good coach. Was Arians the coach when the Cardinals went to the Super Bowl? I can't remember if he was or not.
No.
But he did a good job.
I don't believe so.
He did a good job with what has traditionally been a dysfunctional organization. Okay, with the Cardinals, and so we'll have to see if they can do something a little bit different. So it just struck me as odd. That's all. And I always hope everybody has success, but they can't all have success because it's a zero-sum game. So some do, some don't, unless they all go 8-8. So some lose, some win, and that's sports. You can't all be winners. We don't get participation trophies in the in Major League Sports. So we'll just it just was an odd one for me, and the circumstances seem to be kind of odd for me. With how quickly he, didn't stay at USC. So, but I wish him well. I do wish him well.
Is it?
Although all those Cardinals head coaches don't necessarily have much success. So, good luck with
it. I wonder.
It's history.
Well, that's the thing. It's like there's some decent. I mean, there's defensive corners that can that he can go out and really pilfer and take advantage of that to take advantage of having somebody that's tenured there. I think that almost if teams, if they don't have a guy that's really one of those Andy Reid guys that can encompass the whole game, and a Bill Belichick, a guy that can really get in there and coach it, wall to wall or end zone to end zone. You're almost better off with going with a head coach of the offense and a head coach of the defense, because there's no cap on your staff when it comes to that, and that's a lot of what it comes down to. Who else do you have around you, and that's where a lot of teams will struggle over the years, and why they can't maintain their level of winning is because they lose staff. I mean, Saban was it basically every year he's played, he's lost 13 guys, 13 staff members, key staff members over the last few years. I mean, it's a lot of guys. Like, people come in and out, and that's a different coordinators every single year, but they're still right there, and that's the thing. It's like,
which is a real anomaly in college football, because the way you really build momentum and build success in college football is through longevity of your staff, because they build all those recruiting relationships, and it's on the recruiting side. But I mean, he's had Lane Kiffin, Kirby Smart, who all the rest of those guys are, the offensive defense coordinators that have left. I mean, and Kirby Smart is thorn in the side of the SEC. So, head coach of Georgia, Lane Kiffin's down at Florida Atlantic, not necessarily a threat to Nick Saban at the moment, but not to say he won't be in the future. We'll have to see how long Saban stays, but just the reason, I'll give you a good reason why the Bucs hired Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians was the first coach in the Cardinals organization since 1977 to have a winning record for at least 4 seasons, over a span of 4 seasons. 40 years. Okay, so he did something in an organization that now Ken Wisenhunt is the guy that took them to the Super Bowl, but even Wisenhunt didn't have a 500 record during his tenure. So, and Steve Wilkes, by the way, Cliff Kingsbury's predecessor, lasted exactly one season. We could get into the entire deal on that, but that's the whole Cardinals organization at the moment seems to be kind of odd to me that they would get rid of Wilkes and then bring in Kingsbury. You know, it's interesting to me. So, you know, all three hires today were interesting. I believe the Bucs probably made the best one.
Oh yeah.
LaFleur is a total what? Who? What? Why? I mean, the Titans struggled on offense this year.
They were like the 29th.
And you bring in their
29th offense.
Coach? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Aaron Rodgers likes the guy, and if that's the case, then yeah, bring him in.
Well, that's the thing is, so I've heard mixed.
There,
I've heard really mixed opinions on him. I've heard people that say, you know, he doesn't really have the bravado to, you know, really stand up and command attention at a meeting as an offensive coordinator, let alone, you know, have the gravitas to, you know, do what you got to do as a head coach. So, but I've also heard that he's young enough, and what he can do is challenge on an intellectual level and idealistical level of scheme and playing and stuff like that. Now, you can't really hold that offense there in Nashville. It was just abominable because Mariota was in and out of the lineup. They finally figured out that Derrick Henry could run a little bit. He had a few good games, but was very wildly inconsistent. You know, struggles along the offensive line. You know, they had some issues there. And again, 29th, I don't think necessarily saying the 29th ranked offense really was. You can really take that and be. That's indicative of what he is as a coach. Because otherwise, we'd say Bill Belichick is not a very good coach.
Oh no,
it would stop with the Browns.
I agree because they had injuries, etc. Yeah, I agree. They had injuries. They had a lot of injuries this year. But the interesting thing is about Green Bay is they have a seasoned, experienced quarterback. Some argue he's the best. He's one of the best ever. He's only won one Super Bowl, but you know he is a great quarterback. But their defense was 27th or something like that this year. It's the defense that was struggled in Green Bay. That's what let Aaron Rodgers down. I mean, he pointed to the play calling and all that, but if they had a decent defense, that wouldn't have been an issue. McCarthy would probably still be there. So I don't know. All these front office moves, I don't know if they overthink them or it just appears to me to be some odd stuff going on. Now, true, 2 years ago when the Rams running a 32-year-old Sean McVay, I think a lot of people were scratching their heads on that one, and that's turned out pretty well. Obviously, we'll see Saturday against the Cowboys, but you know, if the Rams make it to the NFC Championship game, there won't be any complaints about Sean McVay, right? So we'll see. I mean, looking back on coaching hires is a lot easier than looking ahead on what they might be. So, and maybe Cliff Kingsbury will be great. I mean, he's got his work cut out for him because there's never been a great coach in the Cardinals organization. I mean, they sucked for 50 years. Maybe not sucked, but they haven't been. They have one Super Bowl appearance since a loss ever in that organization.
Well, it's only up.
It's still the same family that's running it. What's that?
You can only go up.
Well, Bruce Arians had it kind of up, and he left. He did build on the Wisenhunt deal, but even Arians didn't get into a Super Bowl, and they had Carson Palmer there for a couple of years. So, it's the talent level. It's the front office. See, and you and I know this. We talk about this a lot. The coaches take the hit, but it's the front offices that are defining excellence in a particular franchise. You look at the Steelers. They've only had Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin in 50 years, and they've won 7 Super Bowls, 6 Super Bowls, whatever. They've been to a ton of them. So it's the front office that really defines excellence. It's not the coach. Because Belichick is kind of quasi-coach, quasi-front office, right?
Yes.
He has a lot of influence on the organization. He determines a lot of personnel moves.
That's an accurate statement, I think.
So they work together. Yeah, they work together in that respect. And so, Belichick has a lot of influence. But Bill Parcells had a lot of influence. He was the president at the Cowboys. He was the coach and president. But the Cowboys are different because they don't traditionally have had a general manager. And so, right now Jerry Jones is the general manager. But other organizations, why aren't the general managers getting fired? I mean, they're the guy. Listen, the difference between college and pro, as you were talking about, is in college, the head coach is fully responsible for who they get on the field because he's recruiting, right?
Yes,
that's part of his job. He's responsible for the personnel. Well, in the NFL, it depends on the organization how much influence the coach has over even draft picks.
Well, a lot of times what you'll see
it's
is
hard to say, but
you'll have like, for example, you'll have the Andy Reid Bill Parcells that famously said that, if I'm gonna do the cooking, I want to do the grocery shopping too. So, but a lot of organizations,
exactly.
You have the general manager and front office staff and scouts revolving around acquiring talent through drafting, through free agency, and then the coaches are supposed to develop and execute with what they get. And if you have a front office and a head coach that can work together, that is something that it actually can work out really well. But the thing is like, for example, in Tampa, because I have the more of experience and relationship with Mark Dominic, was really good at drafting, evaluating, and acquiring talent. The issue was he wasn't necessarily drafting, acquiring the right talent for the coaches or staff that he was acquiring talent for. So the players didn't necessarily fit into those systems. Although, again, that's why you saw a lot of players that he drafted end up doing well after they left Tampa. So that's the thing is, and that's the tough part about, scouting and drafting too. Do you go for the best available and try to mold them into your system? Or do you go with the guy that's a better fit for what you have? So that's a lot of the questions with, especially if you have changes in defensive coordinators. If you're going from a 4-3 to a 3-4, do you have those hybrid defensive end outside linebackers already, or do you have guys that you can use as that? Because if not, now you have assets that don't fit your need, and you have to start moving those assets, and that's always kind of.
And when you change coaches, the Titans have changed tons of coaches. offense coordinators, head coaches. Okay, let's look at the most successful franchises in the NFL over the course of time. Okay, obviously the Patriots, a lot of continuity, a lot of consistency. Now they've run through some offense coordinators, but Josh McDaniel's been there for a while now, and it looks like he's going to stay. Reports are that he's going to stay for another year. The Steelers, sure, they've lots of drama, lots of stuff going on, but there's a commitment by that front office to stick with who you have, so that the schemes can stay consistent. You know who to draft, you know how to draft, you know what Tomlin wants, what his coordinators want. The Saints now have been really consistent, right? You've got Sean Payton, and they're a favorite from the NFC to go to the Super Bowl, especially since everything runs through the Superdome. So you've got these organizations, these franchises. I mean, even Denver, it's been down a couple of years. They did go to 2 Super Bowls. They've had John Elway. They've had some consistency at the front office. To me, the NFL is not for long, and that's not just for the players. NFL not for long is for coaching staff, and I think patience is rewarded. And you look at the Bucs; they jettisoned some coaches who were just starting to kind of get. I mean, I think you got to be in there 3 or 4 years. I just do. And these NFL owners are not being patient enough, and none of this knee-jerk reaction has translated into success. None of it. I mean, Sean McVay succeeded Jeff Fisher, but Jeff Fisher had been there for 10 years. 10 years, 12 years, long time.
And I was talking with
Fisher might have been one of them.
I was talking with one of the front office people with the Rams, and they actually decided to hire Sean McVay. They liked him, but they actually hired him, a year or two before they really thought he was ready, because they felt somebody else was going to hire him. And that may be the situation that they're seeing with Cliff Kingsbury. If they let him stay at SC, they're going to really see him blossom as a coordinator. I actually think he's better suited as a coordinator. He's really good with quarterbacks and offenses. His problem is the defense. He's in the NFL, you can focus on coaching, and that's it. And you don't have to know anything about the defense, truly. You can just hire a guy that's really good at that. Todd Bowles won't be that guy. That will be he will be going to Tampa. Did you know Todd Bowles coach, or Bruce Arians coached Todd Bowles in college? At Temple? Did you know that little bit of trivia?
See, and that brings me a good point. There are guys, right, that have moved into head coaching roles in the NFL, but that were suited much better for coordinator roles. I'll name one, Norv Turner. I'll name another, Wade Phillips, who wasn't a bad head coach, but much better at the coordinator level. These guys know Norv Turner knows offense. He just knows offense. Wade Phillips knows how to coach defense, right? So there's these guys. I think Todd Bowles is one of those guys. Now, we'll see if Cliff Kingsbury is going to be suited to head coach. I think he should have been hired as a coordinator. I agree with you. And USC made a great hire. It's just that Kingsbury was a hot property in the NFL as well, because of the wide open offense, everything else going on. So, this whole coaching thing, it's going to be interesting how it turns out. I just feel like I look at the franchises where you've got coaches that have been allowed to work with their staffs and develop players and develop a team concept are rewarded with success. And the Cardinals axing Steve Wilkes after 1 year is just, I don't know if there was a locker room issue or something, but that's unprecedented. I mean, and I know they weren't very good, but because the players weren't good. Didn't have a, I mean, Kingsbury could be the greatest offense coordinator in the world, but if you don't put any players in the field for him, I mean, I think Cardinals have like $74 million in cap space. Got to spend that, man. Got to put money out there, and I'm not sure what they're doing. So, it's complicated. It takes a whole concept to succeed, and I'm not sure some of these organizations know how to do it. And clutching at straws and trying to find this time in a bottle or whatever you want to call it, lightning in a bottle kind of thing. That's not the way. You got to build it. And what's interesting is the Browns, as bad as they've been, they actually built it the right way. I mean, that to me is a really good coaching job. They have a real nucleus of talent there. It's all about the talent.
Yeah.
You've got to have talent. You've got to have talent. That's the NFL. You've got to have players. It's not like college. It's not like college where you can have like a system where you can kind of coach guys up and compete, play good defense. Maybe
you give them about 5 weeks in the NFL and they've figured it out. You give them a season.
Yeah,
see, that's what I'm saying.
You've got to have talent.
With what they're doing. See, this is why Carson Wentz, mixing in his college plays and the way he played in college, being more mobile, versus what you get from Lamar Jackson, why he works and Lamar Jackson won't. Carson Wentz is a mobile quarterback, but he's a good quarterback. He has an arm. Lamar Jackson is wildly inaccurate, especially with short and intermediate throws. He's good downfield, but if the ball isn't downfield, it's inaccurate short, and on top of that, he runs too much. He doesn't stick with the pocket. And if you want to be a playoff quarterback in the NFL, you need to be able to work in the pocket. Look at the guys that are left right now. I mean, even Big Ben. Even Big Ben, a guy that's a more mobile guy, he has decided to stay more in the pocket.
Well, there's mobile can be construed a number of different ways. What's important these days is to
running quarterback. He's a running quarterback.
Play with mobility, not running like Patrick Mahomes. Okay, Mahomes can extend the play. He's not looking to run. He's looking to get guys open, right, downfield. So he extends the play to get his guys open, and that's what Big Ben does, right? That's even Brady does it a little bit, right? He just extends the play. He knows to get out of it. Russell Wilson is great at it, right? They extend the play. Now, Russell Wilson has to because he has no offensive line. And the Seahawks are deficient in putting some money where they need to, but that's a different story. But these guys that can extend the play, Lamar Jackson, they're actually running him. They actually have running plays for him. And so they'll have to see if they can get that thing fixed. John Harbaugh apparently is going to be there. He hasn't been fired yet, so I'm assuming he's going to stay for another year. He's got Flacco's going to go elsewhere. So Harbaugh and the Ravens have hitched their wagon to the Lamar horse. So
the Ravens are one of those organizations that are a lot like Pittsburgh. They're not too hip on changing coaches. It's not, they understand that there's going to be some up and down. And I think that they're confident in Harbaugh. Because in a season that really, I don't think that there was high hopes on them going to the playoffs, let alone far in the playoffs. The fact that they got in and they won the division, that helped. I think that helped the cause quite a bit. So I don't think his clock is really, the hourglass is proverbially running out for him in Baltimore. I just think he needs to stay the course. But they hung in there with Flacco. That was their guy. They hitched their wagon to him. They gave him the money after the Super Bowl. And again, he got him a Super Bowl. And, there's been a lot of turnover as far as defense and a lot of aging players there. And now it's time for them to start bringing in new stuff, that new phase of what the Baltimore Ravens are going to look like. And right now, they thought it would be Lamar Jackson, but obviously that's not something they can do in the playoffs. You can't take that mobile quarterback into the playoffs and think you can do that in the NFL.
Well, it's going to be a new GM. It's going to be a new GM because Ozzie Newsome is
retired.
Gone.
Yeah.
So it'll be a new GM. Different talent evaluation, all those kinds of things. So we'll have to see what that organization does. But the other thing too is,
but they're famous for promoting within too.
In sports.
So.
Yeah, no, that's great. But what we see is, we see expectation levels that exceed reality. We see it at college level all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Kansas goes 9-4, and they think they should be better, and they fire their coach, and you're like, well, that's the best you're ever going to be. You're never going to win a national championship in football at the school. Yet they think they can, or if they won one 50 years ago, maybe they could win one again. It's not how it works, right? So a lot of times expectation levels are what are out of whack. And so the organization itself, thinks, well, oh, look, the Patriots have won, 6 Super Bowls in the last whatever years. We should do that too. No, that's really an incredible anomaly. In fact, in the entire history of the NFL, nobody's had that kind of dominance. So, if you can win 1 or 2 in a certain period of time, that's a really, really good thing. Because ask the Lions, ask the Vikings, ask the Cardinals. Ask these franchises that have been around forever and have never won a Super Bowl. Hell, the Lions have never been in one. So, let's get real, right? The Bengals, for instance. I mean, you got this big long list of teams, and hey, ask the Redskins who haven't been to a Super Bowl since 1992, right? Even the Cowboys. You realize this was only their third playoff victory since their last Super Bowl.
Well, you have to give it to the Redskins because they were in a pretty dismal situation with quarterbacks, and they pulled a guy literally off the street to come in and play, and
they almost got it. And if they had played Josh Johnson instead of Sanchez, they might have made the playoffs.
And you know what? That's the thing. Is
they gave those 2 games away because Sanchez.
I think
was horrible. He was horrible.
So with the Eagles, I think like what I was talking with somebody else, and it was in media, and it was talking to him about. I said the Eagles are that proverbial fox in the henhouse. If you let them in, they do well in the playoffs. And that's where Nick Foles seems to. Again, Nick Foles isn't the end-all, be-all. He seems to win in the playoffs. I think he's more of their lucky rabbit's foot than he is their number one choice at quarterback. Wentz is their guy. He's a backup. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I think he'll take less or, respectable amount of money to stay there as the backup because he understands the situation he's in. He's left before and came back. He isn't. I don't think he's the best full season starter, but he's good for you. He's one of those guys that's good to come in for a lengthy. He's like a stretch reliever. You remember they used to have those, the relievers that would come in for 3 or 4 innings.
Yeah.
He's a good stretch reliever, but he is not somebody that's going to pitch you a full game. That's not what his. He does.
I'd be very surprised, and I know that the Eagles made a good stretch run last year to win the Super Bowl, but they're not as good this year as they were last year, and they're going into the Superdome to play the Saints on Sunday. I don't know. The Saints are good. Those bye weeks are really beneficial to the team that gets them because that was a tough game. The Eagles played a tough game against the Bears on Sunday. That was a tough game. I was listening to Michael Irvin on the Dan Patrick Show today talk about how physically difficult those playoff games are, and to come back. There's only been 2 teams. There's only been 2 wild card teams ever make it to the Super Bowl, and they both won them. But there's a reason they don't get there. Number one, they're not as good a team because the records weren't good. That's why they're wild cards. But the other is you got to play that extra game, and that's really difficult. Those teams that have that bye week have a tremendous physical advantage. Not just the fact that they also have a travel advantage because they get to play at home, and they're also the better team because that's why they were one of the top 2 seeds. So it's difficult. And historically, if I'm a statistical guy, I used the recent history to predict the Clemson win because that's what's happened the last 4 years. Why should it change? So historically, the Eagles have a tough time. Plus, the Saints have never lost a playoff game in the Superdome. They've never lost one. Now they haven't had many, okay, because they were awful for a long time. They haven't lost one, so that's a tough place to go. And that was a tough emotional win against the Bears for the Eagles the other night. So I don't know. I love the underdog. I love the whole thing, but boy, it's gonna hard. And by the way, the Saints are really good. I mean, let's forget about just the home field and the bye, but they're the best team in the NFC. They have been all year long. Well, they have been since about week 4, I guess. And so we'll see. But I that's going to be a really difficult road for the Eagles to go back on the road again 2 weeks in a row and go into the Superdome against a really good team, both sides of the ball. And I'm interested to see that. But the NFL playoff situation is wide open. I mean, that being said, there's lots of good teams. I mean, you've got the Chargers heading to Foxborough to take on the Patriots in what's likely to be a snow game, at least poor weather. Dallas headed to LA to take on the Rams. Wow. And then the Chiefs hosting the Colts, the turnaround team of the year. The Chiefs, who have a hard time winning at home, but that's probably also going to be snow, or at least bad weather on Sunday. No, I think the Chiefs game's on Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm about 3.5 hours south of there, and they're calling for snow here on Saturday. So I think there's going to be weather in Kansas City for that game. But my picks, I'm going with the Saints. I'm going with the Rams. I'm going to go with the Chargers because I just think that the Patriots they're okay. They kind of backdoored that second seed. The Chargers were actually the second best team in the league, but because they didn't win their division, they ended up getting relegated to a wild card spot, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to stay with the Chiefs over the Colts, although the Colts have been playing well. But I'm going to stay with the Chiefs over the Colts. So I'm going to go with 3 home teams and 1 away team to win on this weekend. They're all going to be close. I don't. Well, the one game I don't think is going to be potentially might not be close is the Saints Eagles game. But the Cowboys are going to keep any game close because they play good defense and they run the ball. So there's not going to be a runaway there because the other team's not going to have the ball enough to. I don't see the Rams scoring 38 points because they're not going to have the ball enough. Right? Because the Cowboys are not a quick strike offense. The game that could get out of hand is the one up in Kansas City. That thing could be ridiculous with Mahomes and Luck. The key
they
here
start
throwing the ball around the yard
with the Cowboys and Rams. Okay, so Todd Gurley, they have wisely since about sometime in October, they've actually had him kind of on a pitch count. He hasn't touched the ball, I think, more than 16 times, and other than like 2 games. So hopefully that's enough to conserve him for this game. And it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to be able to open this offense up. We've seen the Cowboys at times this season really, lay a dud on the field. They've played well the last the last half of the season. They've lost 1 game since October.
Who shut them out? Was that the Colts? Shut them out? Who shut them out?
Yeah, the Colts.
Who shut the Cowboys out?
Yeah, that was the Colts.
But now in retrospect, now, putting that game in more perspective, the Colts were also on a roll. So the Colts have played really, really well. So,
yes.
If you go, well, they kind of laid an egg against the Colts, but the Colts are, they have
really,
been.
Really
well.
But
so yeah,
okay. So here, let me explain. The Colts are at a disadvantage in this game because it's outdoors in Kansas City, likely to be cold. Their wins are against the Titans. The last week of the season. Again, that was fair weather. The Giants was at home, indoors. Cowboys, indoors. Texans, indoors. Jaguars in Florida. Miami at home. Tennessee, fair weather. Jacksonville at home. The Raiders in California. The Bills at home. The Jets, they went to New York, but again, that was like week 6? So it's still, the weather's nice.
Yeah.
And so they haven't had to face the elements. My question is, how is he going to be able to? How are they going to face these elements? If it's solid snow, the heavier stuff, it might be good for them because it's not going to be wet, and the passing game can work. Your footing's still there, so the more frozen it is, the better it is for the pass game.
But the Chiefs, despite playing in a cold weather stadium, are also, but their style of offense is more suited to better weather. They're not, they're not the Bears.
Well, no, it
They
is.
don't run. They don't.
Yes
run
and
the ball.
no. They do have the ability to run the ball. They can do the RPOs. They can do the short passes and the extended, extended handoffs and stuff like that.
Since Kareem Hunt left the team, they don't have that same dimension. So it's going to be interesting. And by the way, the Chiefs have a horrible history of home playoff performance under Andy Reid. So I'm still picking the Chiefs. I'm still going there because they got the bye. They're going to be rested. They got a chance to. Although I'm not sure they were preparing for the Colts because they might have been preparing more for the Texans. But I'm still picking the Chiefs. I'm gonna hang in there. So taking the Chiefs. So
I go with you on that
game.
one. I'll take that game. The Chiefs.
Yeah.
I take the Rams in the
this is one of
in
my
the second.
With the Elite Eight weekend in college basketball, the Masters weekend, the U.S. Open weekend. This is one of my favorite weekends because you get these four usually really good games because you've weeded out the teams that So you're down to 8 teams. You're down to
And the Saints have home field. They have home field, correct?
All the way through, yep.
And the Chiefs Chiefs would too, right?
So, yes, yeah. So it's this is going to be interesting. Love the weekend. It always comes the weekend after the college football playoffs. So you got you just kind of. So we've only got 7 games left in football. So it starts to tick down here. So I am going to have to part ways and to call it a night. Matthew's been great. Next week we can talk some more football, and I'll be getting some golf stuff. It's starting to get golf time. The real golf tournaments start this weekend. So anybody listening will. I'm going to get to the start doing the golf previews out there every Thursday, so people can figure out what's going on with the golf because they're in Hawaii this week for the first full field event of the calendar year. Starts this week in Hawaii. So.
All right. Well, we look forward to that next week.
Hey, Matthew, good talking to you. Good as we put the college season to bed, and we'll. You know what? Why don't they just forget the whole season? Just put Clemson and Alabama again next year at the same time. Just not worry about it.
You heard me at the beginning. Nebraska's a 25-1 favorite to win the national title next year.
That surprised me a lot. Okay, that surprised me a lot. But with Urban Meyer leaving Ohio State, that might tend to open up the Big Ten a little bit. I don't know what Nebraska's schedule is like next year, who they play.
They
play in the Big Ten.
Ohio State. They don't play Michigan.
The schedule's everything. The schedule's everything. Who you play in the other half of the league is everything in the Big Ten. I mean, who you
they
play
have
on
a
the
pretty
road,
favorable schedule next year.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that may be weighing into that a little bit.
Oh, it is.
Right. Who they play.
And they're returning a lot of people.
Well, I'll be in touch. I'll talk to you. Oh, and next week. Oh, by the way, next week we have author and entertainment attorney Mark Maxwell on the show next week.
That'll be fun.
Talk about what he has going on. He has a new book out, and he has a number of clients in the athletic world. So he's set for 9:30 Eastern time next week, half hour, and he's set for come on the show program. So that'll be fun. It should be fun.
Look
Our
forward
first
to
guest
it.
of the new year, and hope to have many more. So, all right, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Appreciate it, Kevin.
Okay.
Have a good one. Speaking of that, attorneys, Houston Texans defensive end, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call him, Jadeveon Clowney, was paid a bonus of a little over $1 million. And there was some dispute over it. So that resolution has come to pass, and he is now under his 5th-year option. That's the last thing I wanted to get on that. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the show tonight. I know we had a short show tonight. We got a fully loaded next week. So be sure to tune in next week download the free Spreaker app to be sure to listen to the show over there, as well as over on Blog Talk Radio, and then we'll have Facebook Live up. That's all for this